It is such a lovely day today at Your Brand Amplified. I'm Annika Jackson, and I'm so excited to be here with G. Wright. How are you today, G?
Doing great. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. So I'm one of the reasons I'm so thrilled is because we're talking about PR marketing from a different angle. You
hmm
have been a tour manager, sound engineer for a few decades. And so you've seen a lot.
Yes.
And so I love thinking of like how you approach media training and
hmm
speaking and all of the different things that we need for our clients. So before we get into that, I'd love for you to
hmm
talk a little bit about your background and how you got into music and fell into love with music.
Okay. Well, like you said, I'm G. I'm the producer and Rockstar Media Trainer at All Things Relax Studios. And it all started ever since I was like 5 years old. I wanted to be a radio DJ.
Mm,
So when I turned 16, I was still in high school. I became a commercial radio DJ.
nice.
At the time, I was one of the youngest in the country. And then I started, falling in love with sound and doing sound engineering. So at 18, I went out on the road with a USO type tour,
Mm.
and we performed at veterans hospitals all throughout the US. And while we were on tour, I ended up sneaking into a Whitney Houston concert. Remember her, rest in peace. And I met her tour manager and her sound engineer, and I saw the show at front of house at the soundboard. And when he put the headphones on, and I heard Whitney's vocal in my ears, that was it. I decided that day that I was going to do that. So I spent the next 25 years working in the music industry, working with amazing artists and traveling all over the planet. And when we were traveling, we did a lot of media.
Mhm.
So I was off camera to thousands of interviews, probably literally over 25 years. So then what we did with my partner, Sandy D, the queen of podcast Zen, we created All Things Relax Studios. And now today I'm talking to you as the Rockstar Media Trainer.
Yeah, that's so important. It's one of the things that people don't really realize. And I think often when people are coming to us to get publicity,
Mm-hmm.
they might not have experience in public speaking. They might be
Mm-hmm.
shy about sharing their story. And
Mm-hmm.
so what you do is vital to our industry,
Well,
which is
thank you.
100%.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, in that transition to becoming a rock star publicity coach, media training,
Mm-hmm.
studio, your company, what has that journey looked like for you?
Well, it all started with Sandy and I, we do a vision board each year, right before New Year's. So
Right.
we created a vision board for 2022 where we put on there everything we want to accomplish this year. We put on there the kitchen. We just got the kitchen renovated. We put on there going to France, and because we've been there many times. And what we did is we came up with a word of the year, each of us. Hers is connection, and mine is clarity.
Mm,
So we put that on the vision board, and then we also had Rockstar, and we had media. And it just hit us like that, like, okay, Rockstar Media Training.
mhm.
We'll show coaches and authors and creative entrepreneurs how to speak with confidence and clarity, create a crystal clear message, and connect with their audience. And from that point on, everything was just focused on Rockstar. And that's where we are right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, when people work with you, are you mostly working online, virtually? Do you work in person? Because I know things are still so up in the air. And one thing we really saw with the advent of Zoom, which is how we're
hmm
talking today, and other platforms, is that there is a lot more flexibility of how you can work with people.
What was so great is those bands I toured with, every interview had to be done in person, every
Mhm.
TV, radio station. Now, and I think the pandemic taught us a lot, and the technology is there, we can literally do business with people all over the planet. So when people sign up for the band, they get access to all the training videos, the workbook, and everything. The one on one sessions are done virtually with
Mm-hmm.
us. So we can really, work with people. There is like in-person media training, and they still offer that. And I think that's a great idea, especially for companies and things. But what's great about this is that we can have band members all over the planet, and they don't even have to leave their home office.
Nice. Yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that because you have
Okay.
Rockstar Training.
Yep.
You're saying using the word the band. I know we
Yep.
were talking about your set list of what you were going to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's talk about how you frame the program.
So one thing that I learned with working with all those artists is that they never walked out on stage without knowing what they're going to do.
Nice.
They never grabbed a mic and just said, "Well, we don't have any songs tonight. We're not sure what we're going to do." They rehearsed a
Mhm.
lot. First, you have to create. So the connection between what the rock star and media training is, you have to rehearse and put together what your message is, right? With your stories. And once you know what your stories are, you can put them on a set list. So you don't have to rely on a script, and you're not memorizing something like, oh, I need to remember that. You
Mhm.
just have a piece of paper that looks just like the band set list, like I showed you
Yes,
earlier.
I love it.
And it has all the different ideas you want to talk about. Is catered to every episode is different. But then all you have to do is share your stories. So
Yes.
that's where the whole rock star share your story, channel your inner rock star comes from.
Mhm. Definitely. So what are some of the aha moments that you've seen working with your clients in this way?
I would say I think everything starts with why you do what you do. And one of the first things we do with band members is we go through the SWOT analysis
Mhm.
with them, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. I think it's very important that everybody in business do a real evaluation of where they currently are. So, I won't mention names, but we had this client who, on the SWOT analysis, one of the weaknesses was, I have 10 things that I want to do, and I
Mm.
don't know which one. I have to pick one. And we're like, okay, instead of picking one, let's pick three. What are things that you feel really comfortable with? So let's say, for example, it's I have a podcast show or a YouTube channel, right? A
Mhm.
podcast, and I do group coaching and I do one-on-one coaching.
Mm.
Okay, well then let's focus on that
Mhm.
and put the other stuff on the side, and then figure out and create your set list, your messaging, the power of three, and features, benefits, everything that we go over catered to those three. And that way, I think the key with coaching across the board is that we are too close to our business.
Mhm.
And when we have somebody on the other side who can look at things and get a different perspective, it makes us like, oh, you're right. I didn't realize that isn't a weakness. That's really one of my greatest strengths.
Yeah, and it's a potential opportunity for the future. I
Yeah.
think even it's very often, I think even in our business, I'm not doing all the marketing PR I need for my own business because I'm too busy focusing on other people's, right? And so
Hmm.
like you're saying, it's good to have somebody from an outside perspective kind of shining a light on what you need to focus in on and use other, having those people on your bench and not even on your bench, like being your coach, being the best players on your team who have expertise in different areas and can help guide and advise you. Because I know even for myself, yes, I am a publicist, but
Hmm.
I have all these brand extensions that I'm thinking of for my company. But then do I really need to focus on those right now, to your point? Or do I need to focus on the core of my business and talking about
Yeah.
that and propelling that forward? Yeah.
And remember, every concert you've been to where the artist goes out and grabs the mic, there's a team of people, he, she, and they, behind the scenes, making sure everything is set up and perfect before they walk out on stage.
Mhm.
So I think as entrepreneurs, I think we can take too much on, and we need to get to a point where we're open to having a team. Like you said, as a publicist, we work with a lot of authors, and we tell them, you need a publicist to represent you to the media
Mm.
doesn't want to deal with the talent. Just like in the music business, they never wanted to deal with the talent, right? They want to deal with the representation of the talent.
Yeah, and it protects everybody as well.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. So some of the things that you talk about are also the techniques that our favorite singers that we all love to see perform
Hmm.
use when they're performing, and
Hmm.
you kind of incorporate some of those into your program and your modalities. So
Hmm.
what are some of those techniques that you don't mind sharing?
No worries. If I mean, I think a lot of people think if someone's going to sing for an hour and a half, they need to warm up their voice. They need to learn how to really project and how to control their voice, how to, throat, and diaphragm and all that. But when you're public speaking or going on a show, this is an instrument,
Mhm.
and you need to take care of your voice and learn how to warm it up. And it really starts with knowing what your voice sounds like.
Hmm.
And that's where, using the type of setup with mic and headphones and hearing every little characteristic. So if you start there and you know what your voice sounds like, and you put together your messaging using the power of three and the top five and everything, the set list, all that, then you can bring in the vocal dynamics. And that's what makes the voice
Mm.
pop, the power of the pause,
Yes.
the excitement. And that's something that I don't think you get by using a script, because a script isn't emotional. Whereas when you're just having a conversation with somebody, it's emotional.
And we often don't realize how many times we use certain phrases. We all have those, like,
Yeah, I do
like
that a lot.
those
Yes,
things.
yes,
And so
yes.
learning the positive pause, if you
Mhm.
will, instead of those filler words is such a helpful technique.
And if you use those filler words, that's okay too,
Mhm.
because it's not, if you're just talking about what you do, why you do it, who you help, how you're different, then you can't screw it up. You're just having a conversation. Like today, this show, we're just having a conversation.
Right, exactly. So you know what people are looking for when, on tour, obviously, as a tour manager, you knew what venues were looking for and kind of
Mhm,
where to take your acts and how to
mhm.
get them to perform. So, what do you think producers are looking for when they're booking someone to speak on a program or show?
I think, I mean, I don't wanna offend anybody by saying this, but I mean, probably the same in your industry as in the music industry. Like I said, producers don't wanna work with the talent.
Hmm.
They wanna work with a representation. They want to work with a publicist or another producer or somebody to work out all the logistics. And then when the talent comes in, the talent is dialed. The talent is ready to go.
Hmm.
So if, as a publicist, you have a client and you put them out on this TV show and you already have a relationship with that TV. You and that relationship, the producer, the booker, whatever, goes way back. And they come in there as the talent and they nail it. And they're like, wow, they are great. Well, that's a win for everybody, and now the
Yeah.
producer wants to work with more of your clients and wants that client on other shows. So the
Yes.
producer might go, "Wow, she was great. I have a friend who just started at this new network
Mm.
and they're looking for talent and she would be perfect." So I think if people understand that it's really about having the team and understanding that as the talent, you are the talent. You are important. You're the whole reason of the show.
Hmm.
It's really important to have that team around you of people that can represent you and train you and do things behind the scenes, so that when you do get your chance to go on in front of media, you're dialed. You plug into the system, with working with TV. It's a segment, it's a system, it's a very fast-paced thing. But if you know exactly what you want to say and you go in there and you're dialed, then you're going to get more TV appearances,
Absolutely.
I
So,
think.
two of the big things that you're talking about are having that team, so having that representation, and then
Mhm.
the preparation, making sure
Yes.
that you are prepared, that you have that set list, that you know your talking points, that you know your story. And
Yes.
I think you and I both talk about this a lot, probably in our respective fields. I'm
Yep.
always about storytelling and sharing that
Mhm.
authentic story that is uniquely your own, and
Yes.
why you're the best person, maybe not for everybody, but for this segment of the market that you want to read your book, or you want to experience coaching from you,
Mhm.
or you want to sell this good or service to.
Mhm. And remember, you're just talking to one person.
Mm-hmm.
So even when you go on TV, or even if you're on a podcast like today, or you're going on social media and you're doing a one way, like where you're talking to the audience, don't focus on how many followers, don't focus on downloads, don't focus on how many, millions of people are watching TV. Just have a conversation with that person that you're being interviewed by. And by being your authentic self and speaking with that clarity, you're going to connect with the audience, because there's going to be people on the other side that are like, wow, how does she know me so well? How does she know that's exactly where I am right now in my business? How does she know me?
Yeah.
And that's that connection, that what we call the X factor, right? Not the TV show, but the
Right.
real X factor, that there's something about that person that you feel like, wow, I've known that person before.
Mm.
Did we go to high school together? I feel like I know that person. Like, it's that comfortable level that's really what's going to resonate with your audience, your readers, and your viewers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you talked about when somebody starts working with you,
Mm-hmm.
you start with a SWOT analysis, you get to
Mm-hmm.
really think about who they are, what their positioning and what their message is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then how do you take that and then turn that into building up their confidence and being a confident speaker and having that clarity of message?
That is a great question, because that's one thing that I think by just doing one-on-ones, you can kind of miss
Mm,
on a little bit. So we have training videos that when they sign up, and it's on Kajabi, so you can take it on your phone. They have those training videos they can watch anytime they want.
mm,
And that's good. But then they have a workbook to go through, and we walk them through each one. So let's start with the SWOT. Let's start with the why.
mhm.
Let's talk about, who are you?
Yeah.
Like, what's your title, or what are the three things you want to be known for? Who is the person you're talking to? Like, ours is authors, coaches, creative entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
That's who we're talking to. So if they don't fit within that system, it doesn't mean that they're not going to listen, but that's who you got to really narrow
Yeah.
down who you're talking to. So we walk them through all that. And then the one-on-ones are just a chance for them. Okay, now let's see what you got. Like, the top 5 that I talk about are who you are, what you do, why you do it, how you're different, where people can find
Mhm.
you, how to work with
Mhm.
you. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you'd be surprised. I mean, you do a lot of interviews, you ask somebody a simple question and they're like, well, I don't know. And that's okay. But when you have your set list, when you have the rehearsal, and the biggest part, I'll say this about Rockstar, is the band, is you have a supportive group where you can practice your messaging.
Mm.
You don't want to go and practice it on shows. You don't want to go on your social media and practice. You want to do what the bands do and practice somewhere in a private environment
Mhm.
where you can try things out, get constructive feedback, and go, wow, I really dig that. That's awesome. And that's how we came up with Sandy D, Queen of Podcast Zen.
Mm.
She read a book about being, that title, and now that's who she is. And that, then once you have that title, whatever it is, or,
Mhm.
your why, then you can build everything around that.
Yeah. It's funny because the way that you're helping teach people how to be great speakers and get their message out via speaking is the same way that I intake clients for PR strategy. So that,
Yes.
because if they don't know their brand and they don't understand who they are and why they're doing this,
Mm-hmm.
then it makes it a lot harder for me and my team to
Right.
promote them properly.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like I said, it sounds funny, but it's a band analogy. If the band
Mhm.
walked out on stage and had no songs to play,
Yeah.
would you go back to the show?
No. No, I mean, in bands, they also know what their encore songs are going to be.
They know the emotion they want. They start out the
Yeah.
show like big, like you go see like the weekend or something, and the stage is like lit up and everything is, and then in the middle it goes down, and then all of a sudden the iPhones come out and it looks like everyone's got candles. All that stuff is strategic, and playing the big song at the end, the encore, getting them on their feet. Or sometimes bands will leave them where they walk off stage and the audience is singing the song.
Mm,
I mean, like, Queen and Bohemian Rhapsody. And I love
yeah.
that movie. And I just watched it the other night again. I mean, like, when you go out on stage and you can go boom, boom, pow, boom, boom, pow, and everybody in
Yeah.
the stadium knows what song is coming and how the feeling is, and they're anticipated, that is power.
That is very, yeah.
And when you do and get your messaging together and people go, oh, I know her. She's the one who does this. She's this, or he's this, or that, or they is this. You know what I mean? That stands out. That becomes the chorus of the
Mhm.
song. That's what
Mhm.
people remember.
Nice. How long
Thanks.
is the program? Is it a certain number of weeks and modules? Um, and
It
then,
is Oh, sorry. It is
no, go ahead.
self-paced. You get all the video training right up front on the Kajabi app and on the computer. You get the workbook and you can work through it at your own pace.
Mm,
The one-on-ones, we try to, you get 3 when you sign up. We try to stage those out a little bit, and it really depends on what what exactly the band member wants in it. Like if they're
mhm,
really comfortable on camera and they're just like, I need to just fine-tune some things,
mm,
then that one-on-one's going to be a lot different than someone who, like what Sandy overcame, the fear of public speaking. That's going to be a different strategy altogether, and it's going to be a different pace. So in terms of if it's weeks, I wouldn't say it's like so many weeks. I would say give it at least 2 weeks if you're brand new at doing
mm.
this. But it's an ongoing thing. And that's what the band is that, okay, I've got this interview and I'm going to try this out. What do you guys think? And then next week, hey, it went well. What do you think? Like
Nice.
it's that ongoing support.
Yeah. Well, and that
Yeah.
you just answered my next question, which
Yeah.
was, I'm sure people come in at different levels, and some people
Mm-hmm.
need more time to develop the
Mm-hmm.
skills, and some people, as you said, just need to fine tune a few things.
It's like with music or performing, there's no rush.
Yeah.
There's no rush. I mean, we got to remember that our favorite singers and performers have been doing it for 20 years.
Hmm.
Their first show was not that great, but
Yeah.
they kept going for 20 years. And now, even the ones that passed away, rest in peace, their music still lives on. It's, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's even interesting to think about like cover bands. Cover
Mm-hmm.
bands have to play, they often play together for many years as well, so
Yes.
that they can really get into the rhythm and perform to their optimum ability as well as the band that they're covering.
That is a tough gig because think about you're doing a Prince song. So you have to get into Prince mode. And then you're doing a Michael Jackson song. And you have to like that is a
Mhm.
talent that I mean, that's amazing talent that you can have one artist that can perform so many different genres and things. But yeah, think about how much rehearsal goes in before they go on stage. And
Mhm.
that's all we want people to understand. It's not like you go in an interview, you have to say the right thing. It has to be perfect. It's just the more time you put into it,
Yeah,
like with your clients, the more from like the first interview to the 10th interview, the person stays the same, but their confidence level
absolutely.
changes,
Yeah,
you know?
100%. And even if you have, I've had radio shows and other
Hmm.
shows, but then even starting my podcast for the first time was a different experience. And I
Yep.
had to give myself some grace as a host to
Yes.
get better and to improve and go, okay, you know what? That's not really the way I want this podcast to go. Let me expand it and let me try this other thing. So yeah, on both sides, we're always trying to get better and improve what we do.
That's what bands do. They start
Yeah.
playing a show and then they do another show and another show. And if people think of every time they perform as a show, and we have that in the workbook where you can keep track of your shows,
Nice.
and look at it like, okay, you're going on IG to talk to your audience. To us, that's a show.
Yeah.
You're going on a podcast, that's a show. So take it, like you said about like overcoming the fear of public speaking. If you take away the pressure that it has to be perfect, because it's not, it's just a conversation. You take away that you're talking to millions of people or hundreds or thousands, it's not, it's one person. And you take away that every time you talk and share your story, you're going to become more comfortable with sharing your story.
Mm,
So the more shows you do, the better you're going to get. But if you go out and do 20 shows and you don't know what you want to say and reach the right people, the downside is that now you have a catalog of a lot of stuff out there that maybe isn't the
mm,
message.
mhm, mhm.
So it's not that you doing bad shows. It's just, but when you feel confident with who you are, it, you don't think about it anymore. It's just like the band's performing on stage.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
another question about when people start working with you,
Mm-hmm.
like you had the one person who had like 10 things they wanted to do, and so you narrowed it
Mm-hmm.
down to three. Do you often find that's the case? Because I know I used to think I liked working with people who were multiple entrepreneurs. They had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different things going on. They wanted to do this and this and this. And
Yep.
then I realized, wow, okay, but they're not focusing on the right thing. And sometimes it can be hard to redirect their focus into their sweet spot, which then will
Mm-hmm.
lead to everything else.
I think we have to be really crystal clear on what we want to do. And that doesn't mean just one thing. That's why we say three. It's like you tie them all together. Plus, when you're talking, as we talk about with the power of three, then you're directing people like, hey, how can you work with me? Well, check out the
Mhm.
website, check out my show, or check out, my book that just got launched. Like you got your three. You don't want to go out there and be like, I do this. And likewise, talking to people, if you're this, if you're this, if you're this, if you're spaghetti against the wall,
Mhm.
because like, what's the phrase? If you try to talk to everybody, nobody listens. Something like that,
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's a good
think.
one.
Right. So you go out there and you talk to that one person and you're so I agree with what you're saying about you want, and as a publicist, right? You want a client who you is dialed that when you reach out to the media, exactly
Yeah,
but you have that angle. Maybe the story is different or the story is the same, but there's an angle to that really resonates with that show.
absolutely.
And because it's one of the three things that they focus on, it's like, yeah, this is great.
So I imagine we've gone a little bit out of order from your set list.
We're doing fine
But
on the set
oh,
list.
awesome. I wanted to say, what have we missed? What's next on your set list? And
That's funny.
I love that. I love that so much.
Well, I could tell you about the time that the Queen of Soul called me personally and
Ooh,
hired me. That was cool. Aretha
very
Franklin,
cool.
may she
Yeah.
rest in peace. I thought it was a practical joke, and I called the number. And because artists never really call you directly, that's another thing to remember with TV. The talent never really reaches out to the producer on TV. It's always a publicist or somebody who
Mhm.
represents. It's always an agent who calls or a manager. So when I got this voicemail and it's like, Mr. Wright, would you like to? I'm like, oh my God, is that really like? Are you guys pranking me? Like, no, we would have said Brittany or something. We were pranking you. It was like, I mean, and she hired me and I went and did the show. And by just having that on my resume, that in itself just launched me into a different
Mm,
realm. And, I could talk
nice.
about working with the Jonas Brothers and,
Yeah.
Honor Society and performing a show in front of 100,000 people for the first time. And
Oh my
how
gosh.
the fear of imposter syndrome can really step
Mm.
in and take control, and we have to really just really get into our why we do it. And I got a ton of stories we could talk about, Eddie.
No,
That's you see, yeah,
this is, I think, the point. Stories are so important. Sharing our stories is so
yeah,
important because we
yeah,
all have lessons. I don't want to say failures. We all have things that have been huge lessons for us, and we all have huge
yes,
successes. And when you're looking at somebody's social media, you're looking at their website, you're seeing the best. You're
yes,
not hearing that. And I think that's one of the things that actually podcasting, being on TV, having the opportunity to speak and use your voice directly
yes,
can help create that difference and help you share those other sides of your story that make you more relatable to the audience and make them buy in more because they said, like you said earlier, oh, that resonates with me. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I understand that. I need to work with that person because they're going to get me.
absolutely. And when we say about sharing stories, it doesn't have to be this crazy, like, oh, I ran into this
Right.
famous person. It's like, what does your customer want? They want what you have. They want the hero's journey that
Yeah.
you went through. So if you just start your story as, ever since I was growing up, I wanted to do this. And it's all authentic, whatever your story is.
Mhm.
But I went into the corporate world and for 20 years, I worked for somebody else. And then at this point, I realized that I want to be my own boss. I
Mhm.
want to do this. That's why I created this for you or whatever, like, like you said, yeah, I think with social media, we can put out whatever, like this facade, really, as they call it in the music industry, this image that everything is this. But when you go on a show, that's when you really get to know what the person is like. That's when you get to decide, is this somebody I can work with? Is this somebody that feels like, they'll be great part of the team,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Well, and then once somebody goes through your program,
Mhm.
then do they get to continue they continue coaching? Is there a group they can still be part of? Or do you offer other services like helping them get on speakers bureaus or lists or creating their reel for speaking or any, their press kit, any of that stuff?
We just launched this, and it's great that you say that because
Mm,
that's what we're doing now. We're identifying and creating the network of people that we work with. So when we have band members that are ready for a publicist, we have like, hey, here's, reach out this person, like, and TV producers and things like to get started, right? And the speaker thing is a great idea as well. So it's really about creating the community
yeah.
and having that community of professional people that can help each other out and really, like we encourage people promoting their business and
Mm,
talking about their shows and practicing their messaging in the band,
yeah.
you know?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, my next question was going to be what's next for
Yep.
you? And I think you just told us a little bit
That's what we're
yeah,
doing. We got this launched. We got some clients coming in. I'm doing a ton of interviews. I just launched my show, G's Backstage Pass, on
nice.
LinkedIn and YouTube, where I interview people. Sandy has her show, and we're in the third season now. All Things Relax with Sandy D. And it's funny because she's an introvert Virgo who was terrified of public speaking. And I'm the extrovert Gemini, and I've been on stage in front of 10,000 people announcing bands and don't get nervous.
Yeah.
So she basically went through the program before we even had this
Yeah.
as a program. And all we do is combine our experience and her, journey, the hero's journey, right? Of her going from being terrified to speak in public to hosting a show that is all over the world, just like
Yeah.
this one. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And I think the best things come out of that kind of organic need that we see for something
Yes.
and then
Yes.
taking our passion and our skill set and the possibility of what we could create
Mhm.
and how we can help people get better at whatever that thing is, right? I'm an extrovert Sagittarius, so I love I love having these
Extrovert, see?
conversations. And I
Yeah.
also love the fact that I get to meet amazing people and hear their stories and journeys and
Mhm.
learn new things on every episode that I am interviewing people on. So,
Yeah, this is
yeah.
this is great. I've listened to your show. It sounds great. This is
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
really, thank you again for having me on the show. This is very,
No, it's my
very cool.
pleasure.
Yeah.
What is the easiest way for people to find you and to learn more about how they can participate in one of your programs or just follow you so they can see both of your shows? And
Yep. So the best way to reach us and to join the band and be part of Rockstar Media Training is at allthingsrelaxstudios.com.
nice.
And then we are really active on LinkedIn as well. So you can connect with us on LinkedIn and IG. And we're on all the platforms, but really the website is where, and check out Sandy's podcast, All Things Relax with Sandy D. And the last one is my show, G's Backstage Pass, which I just launched on YouTube. There you go.
Yay.
All right.
Awesome. Love it.
Yay.
Well, is there anything that we haven't shared that you really wanted to make sure our audience knew or that they were left with?
I think it's really important that even if you're a coach and you're in a market where there's in your mind 1,000 or a million, whatever
Mm,
coaches, everybody is unique. Everybody has a voice and it deserves to be heard. And everybody has a different journey and has different experience. So don't be frustrated or feel like, well, I can't do this because there's already other people out there. I dealt this with band members, lead singers, and they get discouraged when they're starting out. And I said, look, if every band that saw the Rolling Stones just quit, there would never be another band. So don't go out there and be the Rolling Stones. Look at them and learn if you can how to
mhm,
be that way, but really own who you are and what your music is, what your story is, and you will find your fans. And
mhm,
there'll be fans of both. There'll be fans of the Stones and fans of your band.
exactly.
Don't get discouraged if it's like, well, this coach is doing all this and I can't compete with them. There's no competition. That's all in our mind. Everybody has an individual story that they can share.
Ah, those are some really great words of wisdom and inspiration. Thank
Thank you.
you. Yeah.
Thanks.
And then do you have a favorite quote or a mantra that you live by?
I would say, and I talk about this in the band too, but I would say that in the music industry, I always heard there's an ego to talent ratio.
Hmm.
The higher the ego, the lower the talent.
Oh, interesting.
The higher the talent, the lower the ego. So that means every interview you go on, every conversation, you treat it like it's the best, the biggest. You treat every small podcast like you're going on live TV with the same professionalism. And you treat your clients the same way. Like if you have one client or 100 or 1,000, you treat them like you want to be treated, right? And because people that are really confident and know what they're doing, they don't have egos.
Yeah.
They're very down to earth. They're just like, hey, like Richard Branson, like, what do you do? I just build businesses. I want to go to the moon, so I'll go to the moon, or I'll do like very down to earth, very not caught up in ego.
Yeah.
I
Or
think that's something.
Aretha Franklin calling you directly.
That was very down to
So,
earth. That was like,
you know,
that was yes,
so I have one funny story.
yes,
I worked at a magazine called Ray Gun. You may know it. It was
yes.
yeah. So
I've
and
heard the name. Yes,
I started out, it was a very music centered, but also very art kind of counterculture, designy, funky magazine. And I
mm-hmm.
started out there. I knew I was moving into the marketing department, but I filled in for the receptionist. And this is before there was voicemail. I think voicemail was just starting to become popular.
I
So I'm aging
remember that.
myself a little bit, but that's okay.
I'm in the same age range. Yes.
I picked up the phone one day, just answer the phone and direct it wherever it needed to go. And it was David Bowie calling for
No way.
one of our writers. And I was like that was such a fangirl moment for me because I had to be cool. But he was calling to talk to a specific one of our journalists who was a friend of his and
Oh
writing
wow.
about him. Yeah. So
See,
that
that's
was
awesome.
pretty amazing.
That's awesome. See, and that, I mean, when you share a story, it's authentic. And it's like, and at the time, you're like, wow, is this really happening? And then now, wow.
He's actually calling. Yeah.
It wasn't his manager, his agent.
Right.
It's like, I think artists at that level, they would just do everything themselves,
Yeah.
and man, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
David Bowie's one of our favorites.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, G. This has been just a really delightful conversation. I know
Absolutely.
that
Thank you, Anika.
I love the way that you approach what you're teaching. I love that we have a lot of commonalities in the way that we
Mhm.
approach media training, Rockstar Media Training, and then how I approach public relations and working with clients on the marketing side separately.
Yes.
So hopefully this will give the audience a lot to think about and a lot to consider when they're putting together their messaging and when they're putting together their approach. Have that set
Yes.
list.
Yes.
Have a team.
Yes.
Make sure you're speaking with confidence and clarity. I love those
Yes.
as your words for the year. So
Perfect. Thank you
awesome.
again. Thank you so
Yes.
much for having me on the
Thank
show.
you. And thank you to our listeners for coming back for another week. I will put the links to everything in our show notes. So you can easily find G's podcast, Sandra G's podcast, and all of their materials, how to reach out to them. And be sure to go on all three of our podcasts, not only give it a listen, but also leave a review, leave some stars, 5 if you really like it, leave a
Yes.
comment. Those things help us. And we really love seeing them too as content creators. And with that, we'll sign off for another week of Your Brand Amplified, and I'll be back again next week with another great episode.